Mars wouldn't even kind of dream about in his nightmares. But also, we have such a deep level of alienation of some of these machines, from, GPS to much more complex machines, that this actually is leading to a total atrophy of our cognitive abilities. With obviously us losing the ability to orient ourselves in the space. Us probably in this room, we still have it, but younger generation is completely, lost sometimes without their phones. And I think that this leads to such a big dependency on these machines while we're losing our abilities to do these things without machines, that actually when we're going to be unplugged, we were talking about this with Fulvia before, from the grid, it will actually lead to a catastrophe. It already, like when you lose your phone, you feel sometimes, you're 2 steps away from being homeless, essentially, if you lose your phone. So it's like...
Yeah, I want to pick up from here because this was the conversation we were having. And I think the most anxiogenous problem with this technological turn that the previous generation from ours doesn't understand is that this turn happens in a moment of total ecological unsustainability with no program, no plan to support the energy grid that Tariq was talking about. So this is what seems horrendous, that the objections would be like, yes, but we are dependent on the car, we are dependent on oil. But at the moment, all of these things don't seem to be sustainable. So this last turn seems both totally unnecessary because, as it's been said, it's more useful for war than for care, because, as I was trying to say in my paper, the machines cannot care. If there is one thing that they cannot do is have real concern, because they don't have any emotions, feelings, and they don't have experience, because they don't have a consciousness. And I really don't see how it can turn positive, because it's been conceived to be more destructive than constructive. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I don't think there's consensus around consciousness either, right? Now that Richard Dawkins thinks that Claude is conscious.
What did he say? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Richard Dawkins thinks that Claude is conscious.
Picking up on Agnieszka, her statement, I just wanted to pick up. I wanted to pick up on her thing. One of the examples, the perfect example of neural capitalism is the following. So we have, at a certain age, everyone has been using GPS on their phone to find their location. And there is a moment, a critical moment, a critical period for the way that the posterior hippocampus attaches itself and makes and connects to the parietal cortex, so that wayfinding, we have ability of wayfinding. Once you passed that critical period, it's like critical period for language. If you don't pick up language when you're between 3 and 5, it's very difficult, later to pick up language, because there's a critical period for it. So there's this critical period for wayfinding. So what happens, the perfect example of neural capitalism is when that population who has not developed this circuit for wayfinding and has atrophy of the posterior hippocampus, all of a sudden appearing on their phone one day will be, you have used the GPS 25 times, now you need to pay for it. That is ultimately neural capitalism. The removal of the capacity for wayfinding, and then, of course, there could be hacking and all this other. I'm not questioning that. I'm just taking a specific example. Does that make sense?
You use also this question of care, and of course automation has been used in care industry in general. For example, actually MIT started producing the patents for this hugging machines that are used for old people, that can present for a companion, like teddy bears. I think there was I forgot what other animal was used, that for old people in old folks' homes that need constant touch, and this has been automated. For me, this is total horror, because this is what are the next steps? People surrounded by these machines that can have benevolent automation have be like, this means just, deeper atomization and creating distances between actual humans and real warm bodies.
And just about the care thing, it's interesting because they have in Japan designed these machines. So when you need to move someone from one bed hospital, you need two people. But now we only have, because of demographic issues, it's even worse in South Korea, as you know, and it's gonna hit pretty much the rest of the world. Probably the phone is responsible, some people say, but I'm not gonna go the direction. The idea is that suddenly you had to create robots just for someone to work in the care. And my question is a little bit different. My question is, I've been in the product design. I've always looked at how you build something, but how this thing impact. And there's a lot of learning in how you do things, but it cannot only be for an engineer, because the engineer is going to see the code. Is the code good? Yes. The designer is going to look the process in general. If it's like Steve Jobs, is going to be able to go a bit further down. Does it look good? Yes. But the question is, like, especially in the AI system, by the way, what you talked about, the GPS is already happening with Claude and ChatGPT today, where we basically say we're not allowed to have access to a certain level of intelligence that gives us an edge over other people. So the stage zero of what you're saying is happening. My question is more like in this process of building, especially intelligent machine that will be in our cognitive surrounding, I kind of feel that artists, people that have an interest in the people, have not been included in the process. So I cannot say if automation is good or bad, but what I say is that the way it's designed right now is only going to an outcome that is extremely specific in terms of optimization of the time and optimization. So as I don't think we can stop, as you mentioned, this direction, the question is, can we at least give it not humanity, because I don't think automation is human, but some of the good side of our behaviors, because the people who actually interestingly have these good sides have been involved in the process. At the moment, I don't think these people, including artists, are not involved in any of these processes at the moment.
I think that actually leads really well into our next question, which is from the artist Claire Fontaine, represented here by Fulvio Carnevale, which is, if AI helps us to be more efficient, the question is, who needs to be more efficient and why? Historically, efficiency is asked from the subaltern workers and reproductive figures. Is AI helping us be more efficient more than we are helping it? And do you want to elaborate any more, or do you want to just leave it there? Okay.
Well, I would say that, like, as any previous machine in the process of industrialization, there was always this promise that it's going to liberate some time, and obviously it was a false promise, because in fact it was encroaching even more on the free time of the worker, of whoever was being exploited. So obviously here we have the same situation, that supposedly this automation is liberating some of our time. In fact, what's the result? We're spending all this time on this doom scrolling on these apps as prosumers, essentially, of data. So this is like a quick...
Sorry, I have one thing, because I was thinking about it with your question with the word benevolent. I thought, whoa, that can go different ways. But here, perfectly with the subaltern, in one of the earlier editions of Warren's series of lectures and seminars, there was Mindy Sue, who edited the Cyberfeminism Index. At any rate, there's an entry in the Cyberfeminism Index from a woman, or person, I should say, named Jade Davis, who said the first time that she ever read Donna Haraway's Cyborg Manifesto, she kept seeing cyborg could be completely synonymous with black slave in America. So the idea that we all read, the supposedly many, it's often sold to us in classrooms, Cyborg Manifesto, liberation, freedom, that it is very much in terms of this idea of who is it helping, who's supposed to be efficient, And in particularly, there's so many systems, AI included, that have embedded in them the bureaucracy that came out of the American slave trade and industry and entire, all of that. For instance, bookkeeping, came from the management of enslaved people. So I think about this a lot, that it's sort of like one of the things I was talking about in my presentation, robot slave. Are we thinking about the AI as how it can serve us, or somehow in a more, co-equal situation?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll pass it on to
Not
you.
sure. It's just something you. Oh, sorry. You want-
Well, in the question,
No, it's fine.
in the question of Claire, well, she asked her more efficient. Efficiency could be, I don't know how to explain it in English, because in French, efficience is not efficacité. You can be efficace, that is, no. No, because efficient include l'efficience, include a calculus of price. Something could be efficace. You find a way to do things which are better. This is efficacité. I don't know, efficiency. Maybe effective, right. Efficiency is totally something different. It is, how do you pay for it? Do you save money doing it this way and not the other way? And in that case, is AI producing more efficiency? No, because no one knows how much it costs. Because the problem is that AI costs a lot of things. So it can maintain people in the discipline that they have to care about money. But the calculus of the efficiency of things done with AI remain ambiguous, could refer only to the calculus by the capitalist of what it will bring it for him in terms of money. It could also mean a more general calculus of society. Do the money we are spending now in all the project of generalized AI is worse, is creating real surpluses, or it's just an illusion, a norm. You maintain the norm of things have a price, you should consume, you must pay for it, which is rather rhetoric, and which is not a real scientific calculus of it. So I think it's important, because efficient in France is not efficace, is not efficient. Efficient.
I had a very quick remark, because I suddenly this question and what you said in earlier just made me understand something that I guess was probably obvious, is that, as we know, this is the first automation that goes against the white collar, like the jobs. Before, you were a marketing person, you were an analyst, you were a thinker. Now you become a knowledge worker. And I wonder if that word is actually preparing for what you said, is like suddenly, because you're a worker of knowledge, you become a worker. And basically this efficiency that applied in blue collar during the automatization is now, in terms of words, ready to go for the higher.
That's what I was saying in my talk, was that Taylorism, which was the system at hand in industrial capitalism to improve the efficiency of the worker, it was a scientific management system, is a very, very different, this kind of surplus value, which this kind of Taylorism caused, let happen, which was increase the profit, has become very different for the cognitariat, in which now it's been switched from physical surplus value to mental surplus value, and the kinds of efficiency that are being manifested through a frictionless, like Guido said, a frictionless relationship between how the mind works and how the mind-brain works and how AI works. And that we saw in David's lecture, and I also pointed to convoluted neural networks, there is a kind of entanglement. That's what I mean by the neural-digital entanglement. There's a finer and finer tuned entanglement, and the greater the entanglement, the less the friction, the greater the mental surplus value.
I just wanted to highlight the end of the question, which is AI helping us more than we are helping it at this stage, because we are feeding it. So I just wanted to stress that there is a revised concept of productivity that has been introduced by the operaism in Italy and very much analyzed and developed by Toni Negri, which is it comes from Marx, of course, but it sees the consumer as a productive figure. Like Marx says that even the thief is productive within capitalism. And I just wanted to highlight that our children are working for this new system. Children are extremely important figures. They've been important figures for Apple, that has been testing not only primates, but also like kids to develop a more intuitive interface, and children shouldn't work. And this sense that the tech industry is stealing childhood is not a romantic sense that they should get bored, or they should be in nature, or they should be with each other, or playing with wooden toys. It's the fact that they are working for these corporations. They're harvesting data from their behaviors. They're changing their behaviors in ways that nobody can foresee. And we have no idea what it is concretely doing to them, because it's new. So this question, I think it's a major ethical question. And I think that in the 50s, women and young people have been targeted by capitalism as new form of consumers because of the way wealth had been redistributed. America first, but Stuart Ewan has done a lot of work in that sense with consciousness under influence, like with the new machines that were in the household, the new function of the household. And now we are in a situation where the subjectivities are at work, and the subjectivities of children. We're going back to children exploitation.
I wanted to draw on that and more about the subaltern workers and, the kind of behavioral consequence of what does it mean that, we are now surrounded by these agents that many people essentially treat them like slaves. And some children from very young age are talking to these agents like Claude, and precisely for being efficient, instead of asking entire questions, are just giving orders that, of course, are skipping any kind of, courtesy forms. And what is going to be the effect of like an entire population of children being brought up in relation to an entity that is acting as a slave, essentially? You remember there was this whole conversation with video games, when kids were playing video games, and how it could change their relationship to death because this person could have 2 more lives. You remember? And so now this is even more profound, because like all the children are starting to use it. What is going to be the consequence of all children speaking to entities they are treating like slaves? Like it brings up like idea of like the experiments of Zimbardo, with like how everybody put in a situation of a guard at a prison becomes a monster. But what if every single child is in a position of talking to a slave?
Yeah, Stanford prison experiment. This actually goes well into our next question from Ada Ackerman, who is asking directly about agentic AI. And she asks, what can we expect from the next step of agentic AI related to the world and practices of art? What could be their potentialities in creative human-machine collaboration? Do you want to elaborate on the question at all? Okay.
Maybe Actually, what is really important, I think, to agree upon is that the emergence of a decisive invention, decisive technical tool that appears in the community is never treated by artists through this same object. Actually, for the best example for that, it's what I call the law of indirectness, in a way. The best example being photography, for example, in the 1840s. What happens, artists actually are going to integrate photography, but not doing photography. The exact contemporary of photography in the 19th century is Impressionist painting, because they just take one thing from photography, which is the definition of reality through light, so the luminous impact, actually. And that's what is going to constitute Impressionism. At the same internet in the 90s doesn't lead to artists using internet. They actually take something else from internet, which is the idea of links, creating links and networks, for example. But I could develop on that, but because it's more complex. But the general idea is that it's not maybe today in AI, that AI is really influencing contemporary art. And only artists have the answer of that, actually, because it depends on what they take from it, actually, and under which form. That's another story.
My answer to this would be, that also drawing on what Nicolas said, a relationship of Impressionism to photography. I think that in general, to discuss the essence of any new technology is to talk about the older technologies and specifically even of dead media, and not using this technology per se. And so, like in my practice, for example, I sometimes when I'm talking about AI, I'm using a very analog methods, or like recently I made a film that relates to contemporary status of images with AI. It's a film without images. Precisely, like it's drawing back on because using these new tools, these tools are going to grow old very fast. In fact, they are growing old as we speak. It's kind of antiquated to use already, like AI from last year. So we didn't really, this didn't come up in any of the presentations, so I wanted to bring it up because I think it's interesting, like how, precisely, and, and art allows often to revisit these dead media and dead technologies, specifically to talk about the new technology, whereas other disciplines, it would maybe be obsolete.
Can I also ask, I've been meaning all the whole time, we use the word tools and we use the word agent. And this is one of the real different things. Now, agentic AI. Does anyone want to sort of parse that out in terms of how they do think about it? Either like what you said, you think of the AI as a tool in your practice. Somebody else might say it's an agent, a co-agent, I don't know.
I could talk about what not specifically, we are using a lot of technologies for the cinema, for pre-production. I'm part of a movie studio, and we use a lot of these tools and collaborators because we believe that they can be both. That's interesting. But I want to go back to, you said the agentic AI, because AI is
What does agentic AI mean?
Yes, I was gonna say it's. What is interesting is that the tools have evolved. First, we had all the GAN network and technologies that people were basically. It was fascinating because I'm thinking about my friend Kevin Abosch, who's been playing with these tools quite early, and he said, I have to build my own network because I cannot use a generic product. And so the attention was actually on the tools. Then all the diffusion models and technologies like Midjourney came out, and suddenly the unicity become in the prompt. You're trying to prompt, trying to eliminate the bias to actually make your vision emerge from the latent space. That is very unique, but it actually meant that you have to be good at language, because prompt is about language. It's about how you describe and how you get deep into this psyche to let emerge a vision that is getting closer to yours. It means a lot of iteration. And I would say that agentic AI is a different, approach is that it's not about prompting anymore. It's about allowing mini programs that have a few things. They have an intention. You give them a specific role, like let's build this web page. And they have things that are exclusively yours. They have a context that is your context. The better the context exists, the better it is for them. That who am I, what I'm trying to do, what are the things I like, what I don't like, how do I like this page to be, what are my favorite colors. I'm just making it up, but you know what I mean? It's really good. And then there's also this memory, the fact that now they understand from their previous mistake and they go into an iteration. So actually, agentic AI is already obsolete because all the platforms are now talking about loop. We're creating a loop. It's a fascinating system because it actually also feels like an art process. So instead, before you would say, can you build me this document? And the machine would actually delegate multiple agents, each of them having part of the solution, working together to make it happen. Now we're just saying the goal is to make that, actually it's the current word is goal. You do /goal and then you describe your goal. And then a certain amount of agent, depending on the system you're using, are gonna learn and gonna try and try and try again until they actually, the error, the measurement of error goes close to zero and they approach your goal. And then they come to you with an almost final product that is supposedly being good and is gonna be better the more that, again, your personal, not only your data, but your way of thinking, all the what we call the context, but it's going to be, by the way, the biggest battle is how do we take the context of people out of their brain into the machines? And that is a question is to go back to the practice of art is that iterative art is a practice, but I don't know if, you know, how much the artists have to adapt to these kind of techniques.
I think that agentic AI was borrowed to a famous discussion with an historian, that is, what was the agency of people experimenting, living in a situation? What was the agency? That means the possibility they had to change the situation. And agency is the contrary of the narrative, deterministic narratives, objective narratives, where subjects really are not existing. They are just like pieces of, they could be in stone, in anything. Collective things have no whatsoever impact on the transformation of the thing. So I think that agentic AI want to get rid of the impression that AI will predict everything and will tell you what is the right way. Don't forget that the word favorite of Taylor in Taylorism is there is one way to do things. There are no two possibilities, several possibilities, and everyone must follow it, otherwise you're fired. And this is not the way in which human behavior function, and this is not the way in which things really, new paths are found, or a rupture can occur and modify the things. So I think agentic AI is a plea by AI itself that we are really useful to move things and not just to make you follow one path. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel it like this.
Agentic AI is delegating the craft. And I don't know how you artists, feel about that. No matter what, even if you were doing GAN network and your own models, it's a craft. It's something unique to you, and suddenly you're delegating that craft to an environment that is, by the way, opaque. And even if I'm working on this, I don't really fully understand how it works. And this is, I think, maybe the sub-question to what you were saying.
Well, I also really love this obsolescence, because you think about it in terms of when photography went from the chemical to the digital, et cetera. What do I mean specifically? Certain photographers felt that they had lost years of their work as it moved from format to format to format, and all of a sudden you had to keep up with certain digital formats. And it turns out that from a photography lab standpoint, it's cheaper to run a chemical darkroom than a digital darkroom, because you have to, the software, the hardware, the whatever. And the other idea that came up too is the early days of video, which is, say, if EAI in New York was founded, I think, in 1971. So 71 to 74 were these like key periods. And I feel like also we're just in this such an early moment of artists and AI, that it's going to, find out what can be done, what we think is interesting, valuable. But I love this idea also that a kind of acceleration of obsolescence with AI, that it's if chemical to digital photography, that was, a couple of decades sort of process, exactly what you said, because from my AI reading, people are saying that by the time some of the data centers are built, the equipment inside is going to be obsolete. So,
May I just make a comment? As a video arts, I've seen a lot of people trying to preserve Trinitron TVs because there's a lot of things that are built on this, and it kind of made me feel like one of the other questions about this is beyond the creation is the preservation of how do you, and because nobody wants to see something designed for the Trinitron. For the TV, CRT, with a very specific into something with a flat screen that actually ruins the whole.
Curating a show in Brussels called Wet Conceptualism, and Arthur Rosler showing this piece called Kitchen Semiotics, which was originally shown on a monitor in the 1970s. And we are spending $500 to rent the exact same monitor from the show, because the whole piece is different if it's been shipped. I mean, she said it was okay to project it. I'm sorry. She said it was okay to project it in the way, and that one other person had done that, but we felt that we really wanted to do justice to the work. And there is this other thing. There is obviously a very strong anti-positivistic relationship to technology, because we see anachronistic technologies, for instance, the turntable and vinyl, which would seem counterproductive to this idea of ever more refined acoustics. And yet people love the scratchiness and the whole, relationship to the disc, and, the hapticity of the analog technologies.
If I may make another comment, one of the things that I'm currently thinking about in terms of what can be done with agentic AI. So I am thinking, and how it can be used as an art form, is I've been thinking a lot about questions of redistribution of capital, because these tools obviously are based on exploitation of collective intelligence of millions of people, of the entire humanity, essentially, and I don't know if it's going to come up here in this conversation, but the question of redistribution of the profits that are made by very selected few is very important. But I'm interested in this as a form. Of course, it's a very important question in terms of political economy, but also, so I've been experimenting, and I think I showed maybe one or two of these projects during my presentation briefly, but, what would it mean if the people who are participating in an agentic AI or in a work that is made using artificial intelligence. So of course it's a kind of extraction of social creative capital. But what if all the people that participated in it, or at least a group of these people, could participate also in the profits? But as as of course a political proposition, but also as a form. So that's one of the questions I've been asking myself.
Bernie Sanders is proposing that. You were nodding. Do you want to add any more? Or?
No, it's just because I remember some of your work you did, like the production line, in which you tried to redistribute profits from pieces which were assimilated with artworks made by Turk workers. So you subverted the Amazon mechanical Turk economy to redistribute it. So I was just nodding because I see that as a fil rouge in your practice.
Yeah. Well,
One quick question. I have it for Jan or for Agnieszka, and that is, what is the difference between collective intelligence and general intelligence? This is something that I would love to know.
That's a good
because I
question.
think the two are really, really close together, but yet different.
Let's think. I think it's
Can you
the
hand him a mic?
collective. I think the term in Marx is general intelligence.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Collective is worker. Collective applies to worker, to division of labor, to hierarchy, material labor, and so on. I think what appears after years and years of practice of general intelligence, transformation of the world, dematerialization of work, let's say pollination instead of producing honey, is that progressively in immaterial labor appears, you see, something that was more collective. For example, care. You cannot imagine it, the work of care as being something only general, created by genius, whereas you have collective, you have let's say intelligence, general intelligence in Michelangelo, in every masterpieces of art, one by one. But care is something that presents itself immediately as the work of several people and cannot be, and if you say, okay, it has been done by, people, but that's not what is important is the care. The care is just the fact that humanity, in order to produce other human, must develop, let's say, now we know that it's 60% of care. Probably with 10% of general intelligence and the rest of many things different. But care
General
is probably one
yeah.
fundamental part of society and all kinds of society. The most capitalized society as we are, but if you go back to Amerindians, you will find that care occupies within analysis of the anthropology the main room. So it's, I think, general intelligence can apply, and Marx was thinking of general intelligence, but after it comes to collective intelligence through reproduction, workers, plural, and that sort of things. But now it seems to be closely linked, and probably other things we have not taken into account in care, that is identity, problem, transidentity, that is which are very important. When you say intelligence, it has no, it is not gendered.
General intelligence is the sum total of all knowledge, of all including scientific knowledge and scientific apparatuses. It's very much a part of that. And so my question was really, which I loved your answer, and thank you so much for that erudite and very academic discussion. But I was distinctions. But I was thinking more in the relationship of how these new kinds of technologies, not only are they representative of a collective intelligence, but that they promote a collective intelligence. And I thought maybe you could possibly address that or not. It's being thrown out to anybody. But this relationship,
How can general intelligence relate to collective intelligence? Well, I mean, I was explaining.
How does the development of human scientific knowledge as a repository for a kind of collective intelligence for all of these, the history of intelligence and the history, the transgenerational history, and the way it accumulates, but now creating new forms of technology that even bring people together in the kind of work you do, the kind of collective intelligence that you, in your work that you talked about. I just wondered, is it improving collective intelligence? Are the new technologies making collective intelligence more facile?
No, well, from my perspective, it's, first of all, collective intelligence has a lot of problems, like neoliberalism co-opted collective intelligence to, to extract labor out of every single aspect of human existence through collective intelligence and its exploitation. So that's for starters. And then, I think that there was a moment, for example, when Wikipedia was created, that we had some hopes that, that Wikipedia is a kind of a system that is, that is indeed this kind of summa of human knowledge, that it's, it's parsed, there are experts, that it is reliable, we can go to it, the way that we used to go to encyclopedia, and maybe even better. So there was a moment when we thought, okay, so AI is going to be like automated Wikipedia, there was a hope. But unfortunately, AI agents are not destroyed because it's not trained on Wikipedia. I mean, what Wikipedia is among many, among millions or zillions of different sources on which AI is trained. And it's kind of drowning as a drop in the sea of AI slop, essentially, and of all kinds of mostly privatized data and conducted by mostly or solely private companies that own these tools, so how can, it kind of relates to what Hito was saying today, that she's trying to create, and not only her, but Holly Herndon, Matt Dryhurst, this new data sets that are not created by corporations, that are not infringing on private property, and so on. But, it's the entire tools, even if you curate a data set that is not, that is only based on public property, still these tools like AI, they were not created, they were not invented by Holly Herndon, Matt Dryhurst, nor Hito Steyerl. They were created using millions of dollars by these private corporations and pre-trained on various kinds of, what we would call AI slop. So it's impossible to escape.
And I noticed one more question because it's important. I noticed in the Frankfurt show of the World Through AI that there is an academic or a program, a talks program that you're involved with about AI slop. And this, I think, is an incredible. I don't know if anybody asked a question about AI slop in any of the questions.
We'll get there.
Did anybody do that?
No.
Okay.
But you're going to see in the next question. Let's go to the next question, and you're going to see, and then you can re-ask it.
Okay, great.
So our next question is from Ana Longo, and it is, a lot has been discussed about the dangers of the exploitative system in which AI is evolving. I would like to hear more about the potentialities. Is AI just the product of our worst drives, maybe you can stick slop in there, and a suicidal enterprise? Or can it also be read as a contribution to the transformations through which history lively unfolds? Would you like to say anything else, or?
Yeah, maybe mostly on the second part.
Here you go.
Of the question. So, because I was thinking that we, I mean, as a suicidal enterprise, meaning that it's a sort of end of history, conceived just like that, the last product that we make, and which is a sort of way of delegating the production of history to machines. And suicidal in the sense that what they are bringing about are just risks, for us, risk of extinction of ourselves. But so I was contrasting, the two ways of thinking of it. Is it really the suicidal enterprise of the end of history after this delegation of historical production to machines, or is it can be read as a chapter in history? So history is history because it's transforming. So if something is stuck, it's not really history. Is there something can be read as a symptom of a change in ourselves? I mean, because I always think that there are always opposite tendencies at work in everything happens. It's not always just one drive which is deciding everything, but maybe there are opposite forces, a multiplicity of potentialities. So maybe artificial intelligence is also not just one unitary thing, but is animated by contrasting and opposite impulses.
Jan?
Well, I do appreciate this question because I think the problem, I mean, for artists, for user of AI, for purpose, I think teachers or people who are translating so many words that they cannot get rid of the use of this tool. They have, as we have said, Tarek said, we are in the middle of the thing. We're not just in front of something we were not in. See? We don't have to put our legs in the water and cross and swim in the water. The water is just in the middle of us. So we must find a way to live with that and make it something positive for our brain not to be submitted to, because we agree, could transform people in slaves, because those who treat Claude as their slaves could be more efficiently enslaved and never buy positive things. Or if you're an artist or a novelist, what you hope is to find a new continent, to create a rupture, to introduce something really new. Introduce something really new can be conveyed, as Tarek said, or Manta, by, you see, what does Impressionist painter use really the technique of photography? I think they knew much less than the painter of the 17th century about the camera obscura technique. They knew much less. Were they, for that, unable to grasp something fundamental in photography, so that you find that both thing has evolved, showing for painting. You see, this reminds me of a famous photo. And this photo, gee, what an influence by the painter Monet or Seurat or whatever it is. So that means if we want to create something, we must have a very, let's say, practical, non-scientific approach, which is to know too much about something. If you know too much about grammar, you will never write a good novel, you see. Because sometimes to have a style is to be very brutal, make error, and creative error. Or something that has never been there, you see. It is making coupling things were totally misappropriate, as one should say. So I think we should, and it depends on the way in which AI is taught and introduced among students, among adults now, because they have to be teaching the thing. It can be taught in a way, oppressive way. This has to be blah, blah, blah. It must have this format. Otherwise, you're out. Or this should take the form of perfectly imitated work that could have been used by someone mastering AI. Because it looks like the rest we don't care about. And so a sort of immediate proximity, I would say taste, manipulate, have the way, like sculpture. You see, you must do things, look at the way in which children are hacking sounds first 2 years. They are creator acting of any voyel sounds you do, and they mixed it up and created their own thing. And after they do the same with symbols and writing things. So we must have with AI that kind of relationship. I would say the same as a painter as with the, how do you call la palette, the palette. Oui, oui. The same kind of things. It is a rather corporate thing. It could be used in a very strange way. There is no scientific way to use the palette. Who used the palette of color? It's a stupid AI. But who used the palette in the world inventing new things is each one with its own errors and not at all a scientific conception of color, by the way. So I think this is much more proximity and much less fear of, you see, already done system in which you enter on the top of your, you see, you're just shy and don't move the dishes of the plates, enter in the library. You should enter it and probably makes some transgression and so on.
Now, the question is, you mentioned about it, we discussed about it, but there's a few questions I've always asked myself. First of all, is what can we do? What is our contribution? It's the first mass technology in a way where most of us has no contribution. We can talk about it, we can imagine how it works, but we don't really know. It's mostly secret. And when it's open source, it's mostly ununderstandable, even including by people who actually work in the field. It's a trial and error on a large scale to do LLMs. And it's interesting because the computer industry started like this. It was very centralized in labs. People had actually white, white blouse, and they were wearing gloves to operate. People forget that it was very, very high-end and very exclusive.
Medicinal.
And then the microcomputing, home computer, I don't know how you call it, came in, and there was the idea that you can tinker with the machine. And then suddenly you can actually, I remember the first Apple was made of spare parts. They kind of collected and organized. And there was the idea that you can turn into this. But then when software and basically Microsoft and the PC won, they turned the entire computer of tinkering industry like it's like a freeze, food you buy, surgelé, I don't know how you say it.
Frozen food.
Frozen food. It's like you basically, everything became the software, nobody knows. You have to put the new version, people don't even know the name of the product and the name of the version. When nothing makes sense, and we've been in that soup for a long time. Then the internet kind of took us a little bit away from that for a little, and then it enshittified, to use Korea, and turn it to. And the question of that is, I sometimes wonder. The biggest frustration is that in any piece of art or anything that has to do with real stuff, we have an ability. You can mobilize, you can organize. Even Luddites could have ways of operating, but now data centers are out of reach. Nobody knows where they are. Nobody knows how much electricity they use, how much water. So it became something that is so important in our life and such a way. So I wondered, to answer the question is, I think it's a nihilist enterprise in a way where a lot of people who are supposedly in charge. I've been in all of these conferences where people talk about the future of AI. The first thing you understand, or the first sentence they say is have no clue what they're talking about or where things are going. And to be honest, whoever says they do have a real issue. So I wonder if sometimes we try to see if the technology has escaped, but I wonder if the entire apparatus around AI and computer and the fact that, even through the mathematics, through the entire sense around this is literally out of our reach, and we can only comment it from a distance. And that's what I sometimes ask myself.
Our next two questions are about the potentialities. So why don't we go to the next question, which is Nicolas Bourriot. What could a post-AI art, meaning...
We are together on this one.
Oh my gosh, we got them both. Okay. This is from both Nicolas and Jan. What could a post-AI art, meaning artistic practices of contemporary art, what could be, it's a different construction than I would say. What could be a post-AI art, meaning artistic practices of contemporary art, AI? The second question is, could we make a sort of global framework of AI, artists, writers, students, translators, and what would its characteristics be? Okay, I kind of mangled that.
Completely different.
I mangled that a little bit, but I'm also we have half an hour left, so I'm trying to move on here.
It's related. The two questions are related because to my opinion, to answer the question of Nicolas means to take this. To answer the question and create a post-AI art means that you have driven the big lessons about what kind of AI are interesting us and what kind of AI is totally deceptive or leading us on the wrong side of the story, and try to postulate or ask, revindicate characteristic of this AI. First of all, we want AI that are not consuming such energy that it is mad, you see? Because if you need nuclear plants, small nuclear plants for everywhere, you disseminate such a quantity of plutonium that it could be a next hijack or drug gangster will go to the next central, no? Take the pieces of plutonium and said, now I am asking you to do what I want, or I throw this in the nature, I poison the water and so on. The same for the water. It's impossible. Meanwhile, so we should ask, first of all, that these IA have an identification there, saying, I'm Claude, I'm Nana, I cost not for what you will pay for, not what the industry will bill, but what really society has spent for it, first of all. Second, we would like that this AI will not damage, definitely, environment, a complex system to do their shitting operations. Four, we could discuss now what really they can bring to us and in what sense we do need AI. We're not going to I'm not seeing people doing the same error as a ludist in UK in the end of the 18th century. No? Because it could happen, you see. They could have been so hungry, furious, that people will go to databases, blocks, and burn them. You see, it could be very simple. The tank of water and all that stuff, Groenland things, and much more ice between drill and ice, you see, and people can become mad and really destroy it. And that is not the way, you see, I don't want the images you have shown of the Iron War became a sort of emblem of what should AI look for or be the cavalier de l'apocalypse, apocalyptic horse, bringing in war, desolation, destruction of the planet. So I think we have to also make a plea for AI.
Can I just say real quickly, so Nicola, you said they're two different, very different questions, or can you elaborate or maybe even tell us more about your question?
Well, the question has maybe a different perspective, but I'm coming back to the photography, for example. You know, what happens with the emergence of photography in the 19th century? Artists start to explore different functions of painting than the strict representation of reality. This function is taken by photo, actually, clack, in mechanical way. So they can do something else. That would lead to abstract painting, for example, because new potentialities appear by subtraction of the social utility of painting. So the question actually is exactly the same today. What is AI taking from artistic practices? And that's a very interesting issue.
I have a thought on that. So society, European and American, in fact, in every jurisdiction I'm aware of, tries to create a balance between the rights to a work of authorship by the creator and society. So that's why there's time periods, life plus 70 years, life plus 95 years. What I see as a danger is that AI is so fantastically quick that it can escape all means of detection in terms of copyright infringement, because that's defined as a pattern of copying or a fractional exactitude. But AI can so quickly gather so many works of art and come up with a combination that escapes the detection of those two criteria of infringement. That's one. The other thing is most artists over a lifetime develop sort of a trajectory of their practice. They might start off somewhere and end up somewhere else. AI with its predictive models can map that trajectory very quickly. So I worry for artists being able to frankly make a living off their work if AI can do it in some ways before they can get to it.
That's the core of the question, actually. And the core of the question is what cannot be taken away from artists? Yeah, 2 days ago, I was quoting Matt Dryhurst, who was saying that copyright is an idea from the past. Actually, it cannot exist anymore, and you cannot base your career as an artist on copyright. This is fucked. This is finished. Actually, you have to pass to something else. And maybe we have to pass also to something else than production. Because production is not the most important thing. It actually has never been for artists. But now it's pretty clear that it's an obsolete aspect of the job. Being an artist does not consist in producing artworks. This would be a big mistake to think that. It has nothing to do with the reality of it. Artists constitute territories. Every artist constitutes a territory which grows not by adding objects to objects to objects, but by densification. This is a very Deleuzian idea of it, obviously. Densification. The idea that it's not a matter of quantity, it's not a matter of overproduction. It's how do you draw a line, actually, and I came back also to what I ended up on this notion, actually, constituting a territory. This, and I think an AI cannot do that, actually.
I think it's a very interesting question because I think it brings up the relationship between art and work as a useful, productive task, which is something that has been strongly destructured by the pandemic. The essential workers were the ones that had to work. Everyone else was an unessential worker. And so the oppressive function of work as an instrument of submission and for providing fake identities for people has been revealed. I think personally, obviously, the function of art is to question society. It's to to be indifferent to the values of society, to despise good people that do good things and in fact through their normalized submission help the worst atrocities happen. So to keep society awake in ways that are unforeseen, because obviously propaganda doesn't wake up people, it just enrolls them. But it's a kind of electric thing that goes through the bodies and the minds of people and wakes them up to the fact that our life is not normal. This morning, David brought up the question of the norm and the exception. In this particular moment, I think fascism is discrediting, planetary fascism is discrediting this work of art, because when there is murder, assassination, violence, whatever symbolic activities or intellectual gesture is diminished, is completely considered pathetic. And if through that you take the defense of the victims of these violent processes, they say, oh, well, you're not one of them, and they just repress you, they censor you, and they send you back to the silence that you belong to. So I think post-AI art could be pre-AI art, meaning that in a way, as we have all said, for art, technological progress is indifferent, like every other product of this society. It's one thing in the landscape, but then these territories that we all have to cross and we're all invited, I would call them worlds even, because humans make worlds with humans and with things and with everything alive, and they bring objects, materials to life. This is the idea of making worlds, they make them significant. So I just think, yeah, machines can think and we think differently, and we are indifferent to the value you attribute to this thing because it is not something that will bring us more freedom. We care about what is the source of art, which is the capacity of being free.
Would add another specificity, actually, it's the capacity of art to generate interactions between human beings and towards their surroundings also. This cannot be taken out neither.
Let's not forget that the AI systems are, they're optimized for providing solutions and answers to questions that are being posed to it. And actually, as Fulvia precisely identified it, art, one of the main functions of art is to precisely ask questions and to question reality, to pose question to everything, to society, and so on. And I think that one of the questions that was triggered that art can maybe try to somehow elaborate on is that came out of the agentic AI and the AI in general is whether art could be automated, because obviously there were all these conversations. Can art be automated through AI? Is there like really, and obviously for precisely because AI does not ask its own questions. It's really interesting because now we're talking about AI having some form of thoughts or behaviors of its own, but it's not the same as having questions of its own, And I think that art precisely is this asking of questions.
Can I just, because you mentioned Warren earlier the fact that if you look in music and photography, people are going back to vintage. They're going back to turntables, photography, analog photography. Who had believed that actually Polaroid is now, before you had to get a cheap copy of Polaroid, now you actually have the real, they reopened the factories. And one of the things that I found fascinating with technology is that sometimes the Silicon Valley complex try to say we're going to go there, like the metaverse or the glasses, and it doesn't work because people feel like it sounds technical, it sounds ideal, but it's socially stupid to have someone in a party with a glass with like recording everything like a creep. So there's a lot of things that actually reality kind of push back. And I wonder if like this idea of the optimization of the optimization end up ruining all the potentiality of the tools, and if people are not going to go back to old AI techniques, the same way that this phone has been designed for video, it actually means that now the photo are crap. I would rather use my iPhone 7 where I probably did some of my favorite photos, and I wonder if in some ways the reality and the dynamic of art, because someone was telling me that what the LLM hates is slang, because slang change all the time and it can be cool this year and next year you're lame. And if the machine tries to speak to you with like what it learned from last year, it can look like an idiot. So I feel there's a lot of things that are interesting, is that sometimes the idea wanted by the engineers and these large companies do not hit off to what we can do.
Also, because one of the side effects of AI is homogenization. This is the result of optimization. Coming back to what you were saying about Taylorism and this idea of one solution. Well, in many ways, like AI is functioning in a way to optimize, and in the realm of any kind of creativity, and everybody's talking about it in the creative, fields, writers, artists, that the results, the outputs are, you can see it over time with any new model of AI, that it leads to homogenization. And you can try to tweak it, you can do things in the style of this or that, but essentially it will just continue producing optimization.
And
I just wanted to do one thing, which is to go back to the post-AI being pre-AI, but I also want to thank our two people who came along for the ride, Elena and Christophe, there are two other people in the room who've really been along for this seminar. And Christophe and I were talking over lunch about the popularity of cave art in contemporary art. Everywhere you go, somebody's got, cave painting, cave this. So I think that's one of those things that's, symptomatic of, this uncomfortable moment. Can we have the next question, which is the monster a final exam question.
Sorry. I didn't know how.
Close it right this
I didn't know you're going to use the full question.
Oh,
said the
okay.
question.
Well, I had 5 minutes to put all these together. So
Sorry.
why don't you pick up the
Can we
mic
ask
and
Claude to sum it up?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Our Claude today will be Agnieszka, and she'll tell us maybe a little bit what you. Maybe you can do the Claude summary.
5.6.
Okay. So, no, I mean, I wanted to bring up the question of the. Oh, I'm sorry.
I load it if you want.
No. So one of the part of this question was about errors, and I think that we already brought it up with your presentation and your question. So maybe like about the unthinkable in AI, like as discussed by both Lyotard and Stiegler, and yes, and in fact, the question of errors is related to it because erring is human. We actually need errors, and we're trying to eliminate them. But it's also related to what Nicola was talking about, the incompleteness, or what I talk about as uncomputables, the unknown, and the unthinkable. So things that are the disability and as a necessity. So the error is a necessity, and something that can not only be folded back into something productive, but the unthinkable. Essentially, what would be the AI of the unthinkable?
Already say it's the artist. If you, for example, I'm thinking about Lichtenberg, a very interesting Austrian writer. If he would propose Lichtenberg to an AI, one of the objects he invented, literary objects, for example, the handleless knife whose blade is missing. Follow me? The AI would say it's impossible. But if you say exactly the same thing to an artist, he or she would actually produce a great project out of it. And that's the whole difference.
Well, also I like that you have optimization in here, because I was thinking about this during the efficiency optimization. We didn't really get into optimization. Does anyone want to, or maybe you want to talk about it in terms of, or Jan, the difference between efficiency and optimization, and how these, when I hear efficiency, I mean, again, I'm American. I go back to the history of African enslavement and the fact that has created our systems of efficiency in many, many areas of our lives.
Optimization as an advantage used by AI promoters is that it says there is not only one way to do the things, but one best. That is, each time you add something which is better. And this optimization is, let's say, prevent society from doing what has been done in many societies before. That is, when you reach a satisfactory way to do things, you stop. You say, okay, now we know how to do it. We know how to make this table. You need to follow certain paths, certain things, certain wood. You should cut the wood in da da da. And other thing. After, you can ask artists to do things prettier, you see. But we stop investing till the end of the world and of the times in how to optimize this table. You see, there are things that will not deserve a continuous endeavor of society on searching for the better, the better, the better, which is not the case of art. Because if you look, well, art, and in this meaning, I think that AI is try to imitate it, a mimicry of the optimization in art. Because art is the only place where I'm doing something. It's very difficult to say when it's finished. But I'm continuously thinking of it, of improving. If this picture is finished, maybe I sign it to put an end, and I put a date also. But my work is never finished. It's always in process, in progress. And this idea is probably, optimization will be probably, we should do less optimization in industries and in menial tasks and put it in as an artistic value, the place where you can speak of optimization without destroying the people, without making them slaves of a certain process of work and so on. So it's, I will not, this optimization has nothing to do with the optimization of AI running after the last of the last, the greatest of the greatest, and blah, blah, which is an endless quest. But and that allows the stock exchange to be everlasting stock exchange of evaluation. But for art, we could use precisely AI to put an end to things that are not deserving any more endeavor. That means, and it's the law in culture, once you reach what a certain kind of vision can bring in, you observe that you can explain to the student, this was done like this, like this, like this. You know that it has existed. Now we do other things. It's finished. The work, it's not working still, it's already done and dead. And that's past culture, whereas art is bringing us continuously. And we can help, we can have incredible help of AI to increase culture, middle level of culture of students in arts, so that they could be aware of a lot of things. Go back to cave art and discovery in archaeology, as well as last most modern thing. And this is a valuable system, because I think it brings us, and especially artists, in a situation that have never existed before. I think if you look at what artists in l'École du Louvre or even in the techniques of knew about the past of painting, of sculpture, of art, they had a lot of things, they knew a lot of things, but they could probably have access to much more things that we have had ever. So maybe in that respect, I think that AI can be a tool, very useful, and after that's all. I'm not, don't exercise and say, this is evil, or don't say this is exploitation or commandment over the slaves. Try to do something of it. Try to do something of it and profit. Aproveit. As you said in Portugal, enjoy. Use it, enjoy, without remorse. And you see.
Go ahead.
Quick question, because efficiency, you were talking about efficiency and optimization, and this in, I don't know in art, but in computer science and mathematics, it has a very specific, it's a set of tools. Efficiency is about how you can use the less resource to get to a solution. and optimization is the constant, I would say. Well, it's not, it's finding the best solution based on the constraint to obtain a certain, goal. And by the way, optimization is mathematical. It can be reserved as a mathematical equation, and it's always in math. It's a very specific path of how to get to the goal, and they are kind of different tools, but also an efficient AI would be an AI that use less water, less data, would work in a different manner. When optimizing an AI could mean actually allowing the AI to work on a goal that is constantly being rehearsed and would never stop.
I mean, the optimization in the AI is happening in the hidden layer of the AI with the synaptologics and the synaptic weights. I mean, that's the whole way that this condition of the large learning model is made efficient. It's made based on the feeding of the input layer of what it's sampled and scraped in the internet and transferred into the hidden layer, and then the concatenation in the hidden layer and the creation of synaptic weights that create architecture of optimization based on the nodal relations of the input layer to create an output according to that synaptologics. Voila.
That what I meant, by thinking of unthinkable and I think that it's not, the answer is not only within art. I mean, for art, I agree with Nicola, of course, but I was also thinking about, for example, a non-Western, intelligence history or non-Western approach to knowledge and to problem solving that is very different, that doesn't use optimization, for example. And, just as much as, for example, like David Graeber and David Wengrove have discussed like the different alternative, concepts of governance that were not promoted by neoliberal capitalism, similarly, we can apply the same to knowledge or solutions production, that there are non-Western, ways of solving problems. I mean, there are, of course, natural systems like oceans that solve problems, and there are ancestral technologies that solve problems differently from. So of course. Art, for sure, 100%. But I think it's interesting to also think about this other, because Western science, because basically AI is a product of, started at least by Western science, now advanced in many parts of the world, but it's a result of Western science. What if we kind of imagined, through different...
Talking about with my ecoplanetary sapienization and ecoplanetary exosomatical panogenesis. It was based on non-Western, de-optimized knowledge systems. That was what I was saying, that Skinner's biggest problem was that he was only operating with tertiary retentions based on Western scientific modems, and I was arguing in that lecture that it would be interesting to base those tertiary retentions in non-Western, and that's what Jacques is saying also.
Exactly.
The planetary, the ecoplanetary. Yes.
No, for me, I understood the unthinkable maybe in a less metaphysical manner, but it seems to me that it can also bring us to the questions of censorship and how the AI models are trained. And I believe that the role of artists is precisely to show us those zones which cannot be expressed by AI due to the lack of non-Western values, for instance. I think the question really of censorship is super important in that respect. And that made me also think of the notion of untranslatable. What would be an untranslatable concept or entity for AI?
I also want to say this idea that it's a totally Western thing. There's certain theorizations that algorithms come from African villages and the setup of the way the houses are put together.
It's an Arabic name.
But it can't, Arabs coming down and then bringing it up to Europe. So what if AI is really African? And there are many people saying that. I mean, not, in the art world, there are many people saying
And
that.
what if the internet is the World Wide Wood,
Right,
not
exactly.
the World Wide Web?
Okay, so let's go to our last question from our fearless leader, Warren. Nice, concise, minimalist. What's next?
Well, I was thinking that I was really now that we're here, I already think that question has been asked and answered many times today. But I want to go back to the slop. I think that that is one of the most important questions. And it was interesting to me that when I was reading, again, the show in the Schirner Museum in Frankfurt, that there's a whole symposium on AI slop. It seems to be, according, with Antonio and yourself, one of the most important questions. I think maybe I'd like to change my question to that, if that's okay, if I'm allowed to.
Like, I gotta get all this power on this. And do you wanna? So.
What's your question relating to slopaganda or to AI slop? So, what do we do with it? Slopaganda, yeah, it's a Mauvalise portmanteau word, which has been created next year to designate the use of AI to create propaganda. In a totally different agenda than the deep fakes, which were in the vein of a hyper-realistic, illusionistic trend. And here, the slopaganda is deliberately exaggerate, caricatural, just to gather people around the same values, far-right ones, and flooding the internet and the social networks. And the characteristics of the slopaganda is it is totally connected to a network infrastructure. It is totally, you can't detach it from that infosphere, if we can label it an infosphere. So, yes, we have to study that as historian of visual culture, because you can't just ignore it. It's maybe today the massive production with AI is slopaganda. It's flooding literally all reliable sources. And so during that symposium, we discussed cases of American slopaganda, of British slopaganda, and a Russian one. Well, I don't want to say that's the next. We are into it, and I just can recommend you, if you're interested in that, there is a great work in the show made by two young artists, two French ones, Barnabé Sauvage and Occitane Lacurie, which is called Holy Slop, and it's inspired by this infamous video of Gaza Trump. And they rely upon Warburg's atlas to unfold the different connections which can be made linked to that video. So, yeah, we are totally in it.
Anna had a thought from before.
Yeah, it was for the question before, so it was about the unthinkable and artificial intelligence. I think that maybe rather than the unthinkable, what is a challenge for artificial intelligence is the unthought. So, which is the presupposition of thought that thought cannot think because its own condition, no? And we are in a situation where artificial intelligence is basically treating information, pretending that our brain are merely processing information, but the notion of information is the information as a code, which is totally indifferent to the substrate of instantiation. So you can have information and you can make an abstraction of the data from the very thing, no? So what is unthought in artificial intelligence is really what is the source of information. so the material source of information is not the information. The information is an abstraction of the thing. This is an unthought. And it's becoming true also for our mind, or in some way there is a tendency also to think of the spirit as independent of the matter, and to think that our brain, so we think as it's a software, and then we have a problem of coordinating the software and the hardware. Can the software know the hardware? Or if you can play a software on an hardware, that does it mean that I mean, for instance, they say that the brain is a sort of universal computer, because you can instantiate any program. But if you can instantiate a program, that does not prove nothing about the nature of the hardware. No, so I think this is the unthought, and we have a problem with artificial intelligence because of this. It's keeping this separation.
David, do you have anything you want to say? Sure. Okay. We got the grad seminar hog and leg situation. All right. Any final thoughts?
One very brief thought, in the sense that Anna was bringing up, that when I was speaking a couple of days ago about this very problem, we landed on the question of the mysticism. And I think the unthinkable for AI is mysticism. It's the ways in which we can harmonize our mind and our body, and definitely AI's shadow cones are the problem of the people that have created it, and the way it is assimilating in a positivist and kind of mechanical, still Turing-like way, the data that we feed it, and it can copy neuronal chains and ways of reasoning. But the truth is that these things can be the fruit of a form of alienation and a sublimation that is unhealthy and has taken us where we are. So the suggestion was, let's rethink the techniques to harmonize the body and the mind that are so separate in the Western world, and that are creating us all these problems, including AI as a problem and not as a resource.
I think that's an amazing place to stop.
I just wanted to end up in a very brief quotation from a poet and artist, Robert Fidiou, from the 1960s and 70s, which is showing why art will never have nothing to fear from AI or no other technical innovation. Art is what makes life more interesting than art.
Great, thank you. Thanks to Gail. Thank you, Lauren. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
A great way to end.
Yes.
You did a great job, Michael. You really are. You're really a pro.
I would like to say goodbye to everybody because I'm leaving now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.